Welcome to Time to Press Pause. Real life stories from the C-suite. I'm your host, Ellen Williams, CEO of the Salient Strategist, and in today's episode, I'm speaking with Paige Arnof-Fenn, founder and CEO of Mavens and Moguls. Paige shares her 6-year pause due to family issues and also discusses that although she was nervous about taking time away from her business, she found that when she did have time to focus, that less was more. Her conversations became more purposeful and meaningful, and she was able to create and develop much stronger relationships and long-lasting customers. Paige's business, Mavens and Moguls, is a global branding and digital marketing firm based in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Her clients include Microsoft, Virgin, the New York Times Company, Colgate, venture-backed startups, as well as non-profit organizations. She graduated from Stanford University and Harvard Business School. Paige is a popular speaker, serves on several boards, and has written for Entrepreneur and Forbes. Welcome, Paige. It's so great to see you here today on Time to Press Pause.
Thank you so much, Ellen. I'm really excited to chat with you today.
Well, I'm excited to learn more. Paige, you reached out to me, which is always wonderful when guests actually reach out to me. And I've gotten a little bit about your story, and I'm really eager to hear some of the details. So please share with us your Press Pause story.
So I started a virtual marketing department, kind of a marketing consulting firm 23 years ago after a long career in corporate marketing and startup marketing. And I hung out my own shingle right after 9/11 and kind of hit the ground running. I had clients right from the start. And for the first 5 years, I didn't take any vacation. I was just flat out. Business was booming and it was all kind of full steam ahead. The car was in fifth gear and I didn't know how to downshift. After 5 years, I had to hit the pause button because my husband and I went through a 6-year chapter where both of his parents, both of my parents, my stepfather, one of his siblings, and the matriarch of my family, my great aunt, all got sick. Every kind of 8 months, someone would get sick and die. So for 6 years, we had 7 of our nearest and dearest family members decline. And because he and I were both entrepreneurs, worked independently, and have no kids, we took on the kind of management of our family and we had the flexibility to do it. And we feel very fortunate that we were able to spend that last chapter of their lives with them. But it was a really tough period. After they all died, because he and I are both business people, we became executor and executrix of many of those estates. So it was like having a second full-time job, being a caregiver, and then all the estate administration. So for those of you listening that can relate to that kind of pause experience, it's really tough going through it, but you really are grateful for the time that you had to spend with the people that you care the most about.
Well, first of all, my condolences. That was a very heartfelt story. My parents have passed. I was not that degree of caregiver. There was no state, so I didn't have to deal with that. Some of our former guests have discussed family illness and death as being a pause. So what happened after those 6 years?
So, it felt like a game of whack-a-mole. Like just when you thought things were like at a steady state, something else would pop up. The first 5 years of the company, I was everywhere all the time. I would get up, I'd go to a breakfast networking event, I'd have meetings, I had lunch meetings, coffee meetings. At night, I would maybe hit 2 or even 3 different networking events at times. I was just flat out. During that window when everyone was getting sick and dying, I was traveling a lot. My husband and I lived on the East Coast. His parents were in the Pacific Northwest. My father was in California. My mother was in Louisiana. He and I were like ships passing in the night. We were traveling a lot. With your cell phone and your laptop, you could stay connected and keep working. But I felt that I was on this like treadmill where I was scrambling to get out of town so I could go spend a week with my mother or my father. And then you were there for a week or 10 days, and then you'd come back and you'd have to kind of unbury yourself, all the things that piled up. And then you were getting ready for the next trip before you knew it. And instead of being this networking machine that I had been for 5 years, during that 6 year window, I went from doing more networking events in a day than most people did in a month to really dialing it back significantly. I would go to a networking event or two, want to follow up, but things would get in the way and a week might pass, or I'd have a client meeting and I'd say, I'm going to send you a proposal. And I would get the proposal out the night before I got on an airplane to go see one of our ailing relatives. And then I'd be gone for a week and I'd say, oh my goodness, I never followed up with that client on the proposal that I sent last week. So I'd reach out and I'd say, I'm so sorry, I've been really busy. Did you have any questions at all? I'd be happy to set up a call. It was just very interesting because one after the other said to me, Paige, it's so interesting. I reached out to several different consulting firms or agencies, and they have been stalking me. I mean, they're leaving me voicemails and emails. I think you're the only busy working consultant in town because everyone else is just, they will not stop following up. And I think I've been super busy. Clearly, you're very busy because you're very professional. We would like to hire you, but we can't start for 3 weeks. Will you just check in with me in a few weeks, and then we'll get everything started? And that really left an impression on me because I was one of those people that was following up constantly. I was trying to be pleasantly persistent, not stalking. But what I realized was the people that I used to bump into multiple times a week at these networking events, I now saw them once or twice a month as opposed to 2 or 3 times a week. And they would say to me, I haven't seen you at an event in a while. Are there new events I'm missing? Because I feel like I may not be in the best events anymore. You used to be everywhere, and now I feel like you found places that are better than these. Where are you going? That was really an important lesson because it helped my business. The other consultants really didn't miss seeing me that much. They just thought I had found better networking groups. After we got all the estates settled and everything kind of in a steady state, I realized it would be a real mistake for me to go back and throw myself back into the rat race and just be networking all the time and stalking people and following up relentlessly. And I really got in the habit of exercising and reading and spending much more quality time with fewer people as opposed to going to these large networking events in hotel ballrooms. And what it taught me was less can be more. Instead of ruining my business, I feel like that pause, that reset elevated our conversations to a point where we moved up the food chain, not down. The expectation was people weren't going to have unlimited access. I wasn't going to be everywhere all the time. I was much more picky and made better choices of the events that I was going to attend. And I started doing more small group networking and small group events, which were higher quality conversations. And so once we kind of got to the next chapter, after all the estate administration was done, I just started working out every day. I started taking walks. I started meeting people at small meal with 1 or 2 people, or maybe taking a client or a prospect to a ball game so we could sit and talk for a few hours or go hit some golf balls. And that ended up being really good for me kind of mentally. I was getting more exercise, I was getting more fresh air, I was having deeper conversations. And I didn't just throw myself back into the marathon of full steam ahead, always on all the time. And I'm proud to say that, my company's now 23 years old. I've been at it now for more than 2 decades, and I've really stuck to it. I feel like I've continued to try and keep higher quality conversations, higher quality content. Everything is really at a much higher level than it was when I was just starting out, scared to turn down any opportunity to meet more people or get another proposal out the door, have another meeting. Now I can be pickier, and the business is stronger and better projects, better client relationships. So I feel like something good came out of something bad.
Something good came out of something bad. And I think that's a great way to look at it. I also wanted to go back to the fact that you had said, although it was tough, you were grateful for having that opportunity. And I think that's important to move on and be able to look back and find that gratefulness. And so I really appreciated that. One thing I wanted to ask you is, you said when you were first starting out, you were really hustling, really, for lack of a better word. And all entrepreneurs go through that. I've learned. So I'm not hustling quite as hard as I did in previous business, but I think that does come with time. And I love that you pulled back on your networking. You got healthy, and sounds like your business got healthy too. Tell us a little more about that. Were you surprised that less networking was having greater value?
So it is kind of counterintuitive. And I think I probably am a little bit type A neurotic. And, you hate to not be in control of everything. When it's your baby, it's your business. And so I was scared. Frankly, I thought it was a huge risk. I could just see all the hard work I had put into it for 5 years could unravel. And it made me nervous. I had anxiety over, is everything going to disappear if I take my foot off the gas? What I didn't fully appreciate is I had planted a million seeds for 5 years, and I was cultivating those relationships, watering the plants on a regular basis. And I just found better ways to stay connected. I could send an email or send updates. I wasn't going to do a newsletter. I was much more opportunistic, I would say, than strategic, but I knew who the people were that I needed to stay connected to. And you can also look at the COVID era as another pause or reset. And I think that period was another great learning opportunity, that you can have really productive conversations over coffee on Zoom. And we all got much more productive in terms of virtual events, online activities. If you don't go back to the way it was, because the world has changed, you can get more out of each day. I feel like I'm sleeping more, I'm exercising more, and I'm working fewer hours. I think you have to be aware and open enough to recognize and appreciate there are a lot of ways to skin the cat. And when you find an angle or an entree where you can get a lot done, maybe a little bit differently, it can be productive on a completely different level. I would encourage the listeners to figure out where you get the most bang for the buck, and don't burn the candle at both ends just because you can. Hopefully, we've all learned the lessons of quality time over quantity of time.
Absolutely. Don't burn the candle at both ends just because you can. That's very astute, because a lot of entrepreneurs and a lot of people I've met over the last 30 years of my career, you do that and you hustle, as I said earlier, and you burn out. Burnout is a huge topic today, and some of my former guests and future guests are talking about it as well. It sounds to me, and I love the way you've laid out the story, is that you were able to evolve over time based on things that were out of your control. So you did all the hard work early on, which I'm not sure there's any way to not do that. But to your point, you don't need to burn out doing that. So you did all the hard work and you planted all the seeds, as you said. And then your first pause with your family issues allowed you to evolve to, I'm going to reap what I sowed. And then the second pause with COVID, and to your point, everybody paused. Now you're like, okay, how do I evolve in the new scenario to maintain what I've done so far and bring it to the next level? So the way you outlined your journey through the last 23 years, I think really allowed me to better understand the details of your story. And I really appreciated that. I love that you said things like quality time with fewer people, and you were able to elevate the conversation, and you almost developed like an exclusivity for those people who did get to speak with you. I think, although you say it was opportunistic versus strategic, I think that's a good strategy for people, maybe to be opportunistic. Last question I have is, what advice do you have for other leaders, entrepreneurs, business owners, how they could identify it's time to press pause?
So don't wait for a family crisis or a global pandemic to do it, is my high level 30,000 foot advice. Set your priorities and be thoughtful and strategic about the business you want to run. And especially for the entrepreneurs out there, it's your business, it's your decision, it's the buck stops with you. Don't let things just inertia kick in and you just get down this path and you wonder what just happened. Where did that time go? Why am I on this treadmill? Go ahead and lock in the self-care and the me time and the priorities that you have with your family, with your friends, with things that are important to you, that are consistent with your core values, and work the business around that. Self-care is healthcare. You need to take care of yourself first. As a mentor of mine once said, you are not going to be useful to anyone else if you're not at your peak performance. It's maybe a little morbid to say this, but if you think about what you want your legacy to be, what do you want in your obituary? How do you want people to remember you and think of you? I think the more thoughtful and honest you can be with yourself, the more you think about things like core values and goals and impact, the better off you're going to be, and the higher likelihood you will leave a legacy that you'll be really proud of.
A legacy that you'll be proud of. Absolutely. And core values has been a running theme through the Time to Press Pause podcast. Paige, thank you so much, not only for sharing your story, but for sharing your wisdom and really painting a picture of your journey and offering some really sage advice.
Well, thanks, Ellen. It's been a great opportunity for us to chat. I really appreciate you having me on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Time to Press Pause. If you'd like to learn more about Paige, visit mavensandmoguls.com. If you'd like to learn more about me, visit thesalientstrategist.com. And be sure to listen again wherever you listen to your podcasts.